Alrighty, our video note questions, or our theme for our video is going to be presidents. And so here are some of the questions that you should be able to answer after you watch our lecture tonight. What are the qualifications in order to be president? What are some of the unwritten rules of being president? How long is the term of president? What amendment is responsible for setting term limits? What branch of government impeaches the president? What branch of government removes him? And then the last question, I'm just going to type it right now. I think I have more here. Is, what are the roles of the president? So, awesome, my computer's working slow. So the last one will be, what are the roles of the president? And then you need to define on your own veto and pocket veto. Okay? The roles of the president, and define on your own veto and pocket veto. So, let's first start with the overview of the presidency. I'll give it to you this way, which is my notes, and then I'll give you the PowerPoint version, which has none of this stuff written on it. So this stuff should help you. Alrighty, so the qualifications are what do you have to be in order to be president? This is question 1, by the way. You have to be a natural-born citizen. You have to be at least 35 years old and a residency for at least 14 years. Now, the above are constitutional requirements, which means they're in the Constitution. So what are the unwritten requirements? Well, those are not written here on my notes. I'm going to say them. On your notes, you should have unwritten requirements and then list these. These are things that are not listed in the Constitution, but we as people expect. We expect our president to be religious. What type of religion do we typically like our president to be? Christian. What type of Christian? We don't care as long as they're Christian. We typically want our presidents to be male. Not typically, we want them to be male, since every president has been male. We want them to have some political experience. We want them to be partisan, which means they have a political party. We want them to be a family man. We want them to have charisma. And we want them to be a good public speaker. So the unwritten requirements, once again, are religious, more specifically Christian, male, political experience, charisma, partisan, which means you belong to a political party, family man, and public speaker. Going on from there, what are the terms of office? The terms of office are 4 years. You can serve 2 consecutive 4 years. Washington set what's called the precedent, which means he was the first to do it. So the president would not become a dictatorship or a king. He stepped down after 2 terms. This becomes law after the passage of the 22nd Amendment right here. And this has been in response from the Republican Congress concern over FDR. Remember, FDR was president forever. So we had him 4 terms, elected to 4 terms, didn't finish his last one. But we put the 22nd Amendment to now make it a law. It wasn't a law until the 22nd Amendment. And then there's a possibility if you could serve 10 years, and what would happen if the president, if the president is assassinated or killed or dies, and what happens with the vice president. Compensation means how much do they get paid. This is set by Congress and cannot be raised or lowered during the president's term of office for fear of Congress using undue influence. What that means is we want the president to pass a bill, and we're Congress, and so we give him a raise of $300,000, so he loves us, and so then the president will pass a bill. But if you're president, you typically don't need money. So salary was raised from $200,000 to $400,000 in 2001, and there's other perks. So not only do you get paid $400,000, you get to live in the White House, which is probably pretty cool on its own. I mean, you have a bowling alley, a movie theater, who knows what else, your own staff that takes care of you. Some of the perks that aren't listed here, I'm just going to go over some, are you get pension for life. The Secret Service follows you, which are bodyguards, which just on its own is pretty cool. You get access to Camp David and Air Force One, helicopter, Marine One, and then you get a bus, which Obama has. Obviously, a bulletproof bus, limo, everything you can imagine that's like James Bond-ish, you get access to. So that right there, with the $400,000 salary, and being able to call yourself president of the greatest nation in the world, is a pretty cool thing. You also get, and that goes under the perks there, and here's some serious money once you leave office. So not only do you get those great things, but when you leave office, Ronald Reagan got paid $200 million, or excuse me, $2 million, not 200, $2 million to speak. He made 3 speeches. $200 million, or $2 million. 3 speeches, $2 million. That is not bad. President Clinton, you want him to speak? No problem. $300,000 per speech. Writing memoirs, Nixon and Clinton received a $12 million, Clinton received a $12 million advance from a publisher, which means they gave money just to write his memoir. Obama's probably would be double that because of the historic nature of his presidency. And then also when you're done, I mean, you can serve on corporate boards of directors like Ford or anything else. How cool is your corporation if you say, I have former President Clinton serving on our board? You are set for life if you are president. So these are just some things. Succession, I'm not going to get into great detail here with you, but remember, impeachment means removal from office. But let's say if the president dies, then the vice president takes over. That's the succession. If the vice president dies, then the next person in line for succession is the Speaker of the House. So it goes president, vice president, Speaker of the House. Then it goes Senate President pro tem, which is the gentleman who's underneath the vice president in succession in power in the Senate. So you have, after the president, it goes vice president, Speaker of the House, President pro tem. Then you got Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasurer, Secretary of Defense, and so on. So this is just what happens if the president passes away or something happens to the president there. So that's that. Or don't worry about that page. Here is the roles of the president. This is, again, one of the questions right here. So we've talked about what are the qualifications, what are the unwritten rules, what are the terms of office, what amendment is responsible for setting these terms. You should be able to answer these 3 questions. This is what we're going to be talking about now, 4, 5, and this one you do on your own. So, roles of the president. I'm going to go kind of quick with this. It's not too difficult. The role of the president is chief legislator. What does that mean? He proposes legislature. And so, but again, to propose it in the House or the Senate, it's going to come from a congressman, but he proposes it to them. He signs laws, and then he also has the power to veto legislation. He lacks this right here, which is called a line item veto. Clinton used to use this. The governors can use this. That's a question you are going to see on your final. The difference between a governor and a president is the governor can use line item veto. You can call a special session of Congress and make State of the Union address to Congress. These are the powers. Here's some of the checks. Congress need not pass suggested legislation because, again, he proposed, suggests the legislation to them. They don't have to pass it. And Congress can override a veto by 2/3 majority in both houses. Chief Executive, power, take care of clause, Article 2, requires the President to enforce laws, treaties, and court decisions. And this is, again, how some examples of what's been there. Don't worry necessarily about that. Another thing the President does, the Chief Executive appoints officials to office and can fire them. Also issues executive orders, which have the force of laws to carry out those laws. We learned about that a while ago. There's examples of that. Checks, Congress can pass the laws, power of the purse, Senate can reject appointments and treaties. Remember that. Impeachment, this is a question. Who impeaches the President? House. Who removes them? Senate. These are branches of government. And the Supreme Court can strike down any executive order. So these are the powers. This is how you check those powers. Commander-in-Chief, head of the armed forces. What are the checks of this? Congress appropriates funds of military. Congress declares war, and War Powers Act. But the President has gone through that by other means that we've learned about before. Chief Diplomat, powers, sets foreign policy, appoints and receives ambassadors, negotiates both treaties and executive agreements. Checks, Congress appropriates funds for foreign affairs, and Senate rejects ambassadors and treaties. Chief of State, he's the ceremonial head of our nation. Again, this tells you toss the first ball, visits natural disasters. Chief Jurist, powers, appoints federal judges, issues pardons and amnesty, which means you can't get evicted anymore. Again, powers, Senate and senators can place holds on appointments, can filibuster nominations, to reject judicial appointments. Non-constitutional, and this will be where we end it. He's the head of the political party because he's the president and chief economist responsible for the overall health of the economy. However, he does have the chairman of the Fed that helps him with that. And so, there you go. Now, for those of you who like PowerPoint, there you go. Same thing. President. Now, they're elected by the Electoral College, as you know, not the popular vote in there. 35, can't serve more than 2 terms, natural born, well-educated, political experience. Here's what we just went over, but this doesn't describe that. What I just gave you does. Here's some of the powers. Again, we just went over that. If you wanted to look at it this way, ensures Congress laws are faithfully executed. And then we've talked about this before. The executive branch, basically, the vice president has 2 duties: become president after president, if the office is vacant, preside over the Senate, does dole work. Executive powers, we just kind of talked about. During emergency, powers can grow vast proportions. Checks and balances, you have formal versus informal powers. Don't worry about those. And there you go. Chief of party role, or the chief of the party, he personally lobbies members of Congress for things he wants. Source of presidential influence over Congress, has the power to use the media to bully the Congress, veto, and then presence of natural emergency. All this stuff was given to you guys, just I organized it different in my notes than I did on the PowerPoint. Okay? If you have any questions, write them down, and we'll discuss them in class tomorrow. We will have a video quiz on this. I will make it 2 more recall questions, and then 1 conceptual question for your extra credit. Maybe 2 questions. Alrighty, crazies. Have a great day.